ensure every right and protection currently in EU law is transferred to the UK statute book. The Brexit Secretary David Davis has been setting out plans to transfer the legislation to Britain under the Great Repeal Bill. Meanwhile, after a number of banks and financial institutions announced plans to relocate staff to the EU from London, Jeremy Brown, who represents the City of London Corporation in Brussels, has told LBC that won't fundamentally change anything.
Overwhelmingly, London will be Europe's global financial centre. It will be Europe's gateway to the world of finance, and London will remain on a par with New York and Singapore as genuinely global centres in a way that nowhere else in Europe can claim to be.
Police are investigating the murder of a mother and her 13-year-old son in the West Midlands. The boy's father was also seriously hurt in the attack at the family home in Stourbridge this morning. A man believed to be known to the family has been arrested. And search teams have found 5 bodies along with the wreckage of a missing helicopter in North Wales. The aircraft disappeared yesterday afternoon while flying from Luton to Dublin. The LBC Markets report: the FTSE 100 has ended the day down 4 at 73.60. The pound buys you $1.24 and €1.16. LBC weather: rain in northern and western parts tonight, otherwise dry, mild, a low of 10 Celsius. Cloudy tomorrow with a mix of rain and sunny spells and a high of 20 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rupert Bartia.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Ross Powell. In North London, the A1 has 2 lanes closed northbound between Stirling Corner and Boreham Wood following a serious accident. There are queues stretching back towards Apex Corner. At Bow in East London, the A12 is still closed south at the junction with the A11. This is on the southbound approach to the Blackwall Tunnel because of a serious accident. There are queues stretching back towards Hackney Wick. The M40 has 2 lanes closed southbound between junction 5 at Stokenchurch and 4 for High Wycombe because of a 3-vehicle accident. You'll find delays on the approach there, and delays continue on the northbound M1 through Nottinghamshire towards junction 28 at Alfreton because of an accident earlier on this afternoon. On the tubes in London, severe delays continue on the entire Central line because of a faulty train. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and more about you later on in the programme. But today in Malta, the Prime Ministers and Presidents of the European Union met, all 27 of them. That's right, 27 of them. The 28th wasn't there. Why? Because we triggered Article 50 yesterday and we are leaving. And of course there's been claim and counterclaim, and Mr Verhofstadt from the European Parliament has accused Theresa May of blackmail, and the negotiations have begun. But what interests me today is the reaction of the 27 and the European Commission to Brexit. I wondered, what were they going to do? Were they going to be sensible? Were they going to realise that actually member states want more power to be given back to them and to the people? Or were they going to continue on their course of ever closer union, something that has been written into the European treaties starting 60 years ago? Well, the real boss man in the European Union is Jean-Claude Juncker. He's president of the European Commission, and this is what he said in Malta today.
This is, in fact, as I said earlier, a sad day because the British have decided, by writing, to leave the European Union, a choice they will regret one day. But I'm feeling fine tonight because we had this kind of dialogue, and because we are talking about the European future. And in fact, although we have our weaknesses and our failures, we should consider that Europe is the best place on earth to live.
Well, there you are. The European Union is the best place on earth. How's about that then? So what Mr Juncker is saying is that this needs to be a new beginning, not for a decentralised European Union, not for one with powers given back to the peoples of Europe and the nation states. No, a new beginning for more European integration. And I have been hearing these phrases time and again over the course of the 19 years, I think it is now, that I've been in the European Parliament. Indeed, Mr Verhofstadt, in almost every speech in the Parliament, says what the peoples want is more Europe. And there's Juncker confirming it. So the lesson from Brexit is we need to have more integration. Do you think the EU project will survive without us. Well, if you think it's really looking terribly good for Brussels, then do call me on 0345 60 60 973. If you think the truth is we haven't just triggered Article 50, we've triggered the end of the European Union and they really need to wake up and smell the coffee, then text me at 84850. And if you think the EU needs to change, to modernise, to give powers back to member states, then of course you can tweet me using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And our first caller this evening is Peter in Whitechapel. Peter, is Juncker right? I mean, is the response to Brexit to centralise even more deeply?
Well, no. I mean, listening to what his announcement was, you know, he said, "Oh, it's not perfect. We've got lots of problems, this, that, and the other," and he's admitted it. He's admitted it that Europe is a failure, but I think it will go on in some way, shape, or form, and Europe is the only place to be. Well, maybe European nations are very nice, but the euro isn't.
No, the Euro's... Well, the Euro, Peter, surely for the Mediterranean countries, any objective comment has to be that it's been a disaster with youth unemployment rates in Spain and Portugal and Italy and Greece averaging over 40%. Youth unemployment over 40%. Can't be good, can it?
But no, that's... And he's, as he said that we, you know, poor Britain, I think he'll eat his words. I mean, Britain will... We will go on and we'll, you know, listen, we've had recessions while we've been in the European Union and we've come out the other side stronger.
Yeah, well, we certainly did back in the early 90s, but that was a rather self-inflicted one, of course, when John Major signed us up to the exchange rate mechanism pegging sterling against the Deutschmark. Now, I mean, Peter, I have to say, I think, frankly, Juncker is delusional if he thinks that we are somehow going to change our minds and get back on the EU boat. And Peter, my view is we're in a lifeboat and they've hit the iceberg. That's my view.
And another thing, tongue in cheek, if they won't change, maybe a few cruise missiles up Juncker's bunker might get him to change his mind.
Well, that's possible. I have to say, even as one of the probably most outspoken Eurosceptics there's been in Britain in the last 25 years, I've never actually advocated cruise missiles, Peter, and I don't think they're necessary. I think the project is doing itself in, frankly, without anything like that. I thank you. I'm going to ask Ryan in Belfast. Ryan, we're leaving. There's only 27 heads of state now today. They're in Malta, but Juncker thinks this is their chance to integrate more deeply. I'm not sure they can survive any of this, are you?
Not a chance, Nigel. Absolutely not a chance. The biggest problem they have is not so much us leaving, it's the impact it'll have on Eastern European countries. So for the past maybe 5-10 years, the likes of Poland and Hungary have always looked at Britain as sort of the modernising voice in the European Union, the sort of advancement against deeper integration. With us gone now, Poland is going to freak out.
Yeah, and not just Poland.
Well, not just Poland, but the likes of Hungary, Romania, they don't want further Europe. They never have wanted further Europe. They fought for years against communist rule. Now with us gone, they can see Brussels advancing with the way Russia did in the past.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Ryan. In fact, I mean, particularly if we look at the Czech Republic, if we look at Hungary, if we look at Poland, we look at Slovakia. I mean, take those four countries and their response to Mrs. Merkel when she said, look, I've asked all these people to come into Europe. A lot of them have come and they've come to Germany. So what we're going to do now, well, I've got a brilliant idea. What we're going to do is we're going to have a quota and we're going to give you each tens of thousands of the migrants that have come in. I think, you know, we're always thinking, who's going to be the next to rebel or leave? Is it going to be the Netherlands or is it going to be, you know, Denmark, or is Greece going to crash out or whatever? But you may well be right. It may be a very interesting point.
A frightening prospect for them for some reason.
Clearly, Barbara, if we joined the euro, then leaving would be a lot more complicated, wouldn't it?
Well, I think so, believe so. Definitely. But I think just because of our economy was, we just felt stronger. And I think that if some countries, obviously the Eastern European countries, they've really been left. You know, Lithuania being stopped producing milk for people, and you know, it's all the directives they've had from Brussels, from the European Union to do this and do that, and all their labour force is depleted because they moved.
Oh yeah.
So
Barbara, do you know?
They won't have the courage to do anything.
Do you know, we're always hearing what a wonderful success and benefit the European Union has been, particularly for countries that formerly lived behind the Iron Curtain. And you mentioned a moment ago Lithuania. And I went out to Lithuania and gave a speech a couple of years ago. They were about to join the Euro. And I gave this speech. And quite why, I'm not sure, but the Lithuanian Prime Minister turned up to listen to my speech to say that actually I thought he was making a catastrophic mistake. And he sort of went rather red sitting in the front row. But afterwards, over sort of sandwiches and a glass of something at lunchtime, I was talking to him about, what had the impact of EU membership been on Lithuania? And you know something? 25% of their population have left the country since 2004. They've lost all their young doctors, all their young lawyers, all their young professionals, and actually the place is a disaster because of the overnight transition to free movement of people. So, Barbara, I actually, in many ways, I feel quite sorry for some of these countries. I feel sorry for what's happened to Lithuania. I feel really sorry for what's happened to Greece, with its economy having contracted by 28%. And I think, Barbara, at some point, my view is they will pluck up the courage to do what we've done. Yeah, well, I hope so for their sake as well.
Help. We could help.
How can we help, Barbara?
Sorry?
How can we help them?
Oh, well, I just feel that we could somehow offer, I don't know what kind of help, whether it be financial or whatever, but just to give them some support.
So could we be like the Pied Piper? That we're the ones that lead the other countries out of the European Union. Mr. Juncker will retire back to Luxembourg. We'll sack tens of thousands of civil servants, and then we'll start again. We'll have a new Europe of nation states cooperating and trading together. Barbara, maybe, but I'm with you. I think for them it would be a very, very good thing. I'm going to just have a couple of quick texts and tweets. Will the Brit project survive without Europe? Of course it will. The EU will collapse. Thank God for the common sense of the Brexit voter. And that comes from Stephen from Norfolk. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more text, tweets and messages as this show goes on. But for now, it's 7:15. You're listening to Nigel Farage live on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
The backlash against Brexit continues, with Lily Allen saying that Theresa May was being very unchristian. Lucy Thomas is head of Brexit advice at Edelman.
I think that's most ironic is that lots of celebrities like Lily Allen wouldn't speak out during the referendum campaign. We asked a lot of them whether they would voice their opinion. Lots were in favour of remaining in the EU, and they didn't want to get involved in a political debate.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, now open in Aberdeen.
Your business is growing. Fantastic. But you need to hire fast. Enter Indeed.com. Already used by over 3 million businesses for hiring. And with more people in the UK using Indeed than any other job site, you'll find more great candidates and sooner on Indeed. Find your next hire on the world's #1 job site, Indeed.com. Terms, conditions, quality standards and usage limits apply. World's #1 job site based on total unique visitors to Indeed.com.
The trouble with investing in cash ISAs these days is that you never seem to get a decent return. With today's high inflation and low interest rates, your money just doesn't reach its potential. At Money Farm, our experts can match you with an investment ISA that could give your money the chance to perform better. And right now, you could have your full ISA allowance looked after, free of management fees for a year if you transfer over £10,000. Visit moneyfarm.com. Your capital is at risk. Money Farm is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Divorce. It affects every part of your life. You, your family, your home, your finances. And if you're a man facing divorce, perhaps even one you don't want, the situation becomes even more complicated. It's at times like these that you need a professional you can trust. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordell.co.uk, office in central London. A partner men can count on.
You can earn more with a degree.
And you can get a degree in just 2 years with a course at GSM London.
Degrees are awarded by Plymouth University, and if you don't have a formal qualification, you can start on our foundation year.
Places are available for June at our Greenford and Greenwich campuses.
Enroll now. Text GSM to 66777
or visit gsmlondon.ac.uk.
GSM London.
Have bold dreams.
Welcome to London's exquisite Indian dining experience, Mala Restaurant. The finest North Indian cuisine in the most charming setting. Find us in the heart of one of London's divine hidden gems, St Katharine's Dock. Mala Restaurant. Visit us in St Katharine's Dock or go to marlarestaurant.co.uk.
Mala. Discover a jewel in London's secret paradise.
I know I know how Eskimos kiss. I know a time when a mullet wasn't a fish. And I definitely know this piece of music. But I don't know my state pension.
There's a simple way to find out when you can get your state pension and how much it'll be. Search Your State Pension and get to know yours.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show, live from Zurich. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
So at 12:20 yesterday, Sir Tim Barrow, Britain's ambassador to the European Union, walked into the room, approached Donald Tusk, gave him that letter and said, "You've been triggered." Well, he might have said that, I don't know. But he gave him the letter, didn't he? Triggering Article 50 with Mrs May's signature on the bottom. And the question I'm asking you tonight is, effectively, has Sir Tim Barrow triggered the end of the European Union itself? Because the response I can see today from Jean-Claude Juncker saying that this is a new beginning for European integration, frankly, has to be delusional. And I have a tweet here. Given your immense experience, what active part will you now play in negotiating the detail of Brexit? Thanks, Jock. Jock, I can tell you that at no point have the British government asked me to help them in any way at all. Now, we did last night, as you know, asked Theresa May whether she'd come on the programme in this spirit of unity she was talking about yesterday, and she was too busy to speak to us. But I'm here, Prime Minister. I'm on LBC from 7 till 8, Monday through Thursday, every single week. So if you'd like me to help, you can always do it on air using LBC. I'm not so sure, actually, that she will. But if they wanted my help, Jock, I would give it. As it is, what I plan to do is to continue to lead a group in the European Parliament for the next 2 years, point out where things are going well or where things are going badly, and do my best, given my profile in the other European countries, do my best. I want to try to get German car workers and French winemakers and Belgian chocolate manufacturers to put massive pressure on their governments and on the European Commission to say, look, we sell a lot of our stuff into the United Kingdom. It's our best export market in the world. We actually call it Treasure Island. Can you please not be silly? Can you please not stand in the way? Let's have a simple free trade deal. OK, a quick question here. Nigel, can you explain why the EU bandwagon moves venues? It costs millions, but why? Julia in the West Mids. Julia, 12 times a year, they come into my office in Brussels, where we've loaded the contents of the office into big plastic boxes. Those boxes are then carried away by these chaps, loaded up onto lorries, driven 400 kilometres down the European motorways, where they're unloaded into my other office, which is in the Strasbourg Parliament, and that kit stays there for 4 days a month, and after that it's loaded back in the boxes and taken back to Brussels. It's the biggest travelling circus since Billy Smart's. It costs at least 250 million euros a year just to move the stuff back and forwards. And for an organisation that is always obsessed about carbon emissions, well, it isn't doing much for that either. Could it ever be changed? No, because to change a detail of a treaty, and the treaty says Strasbourg should be the home, which is rather ludicrous, but it's true, you would need unanimity, and the French would never vote, would they, for thousands of people once a month going to Strasbourg, which, by the way, is a beautiful city if you've never been, and spending all that money. And one of my arguments in the Brexit campaign was, if we can't even reform that, what hope is there of doing anything else? I'm going to ask Evan in Slough. Evan, have we triggered the end of the European Union?
Hi, Nigel. No, I don't believe we have. I think the EU will do very well. I think the point you just made about the fact that the EU, the EU exports more to us than we import, so they're dependent on us. I think that point you've made quite a lot. But under WTO, the UK cannot raise tariffs on the EU, and we will have to pay tariffs into the EU. So take, for example, cars. So for cars, we'll be assuming we get knocked out under WTO. The net result is we will have to use WTO rules, which prevent us from raising tariffs. If we do raise them on the EU, we have to raise them on everybody, and that's not going to happen because we want to be a free trading country. So that we will be paying 10%
Well, hang
more.
on. Well, Evan, hang on. Yeah. We already charge tariffs for goods that are coming into this country from outside the EU, such as Japanese motor cars.
Absolutely. So let's start with the EU, though, because we're talking about the impact of the UK leaving on the EU and how dependent we are. Well, the fact is the German cars will continue to be sold in the UK with virtually no tariff. So they're going to be unaffected. We will be selling our cars into EU with 10% tariff. We're completely affected. Our cars are more expensive. There was no benefit to that. And Mrs. May knows this. She knows this, and she's not telling people what she said. And she's responded by saying, we will basically become a low tax haven UK, so that effectively those companies she's promised that we will not pay this tariff will basically get a tax discount so that they can afford to sell these cars into the EU. And the net result is the taxpayer is basically paying the tariff into the EU that would otherwise be the membership bill. We are effectively still paying the membership bill. The EU loses nothing. They gain. In fact, they start to get jobs. As jobs begin to disappear out of the UK or migrate, they'll migrate into the EU. I mean, let's take Japan. Japan has warned us that hundreds of thousands of jobs that they put in the UK are at risk because of this. And why? Because Japan faces quotas of selling into the EU. They face real quotas.
Actually, well, hang on, Evan. Hang on. I'm sitting here in Zurich this evening, and I've been with a group of Swiss businessmen today. And one of the things we've been talking about is trade. Now, take Japan. Switzerland, of course, little country, negotiates its own trade terms on the world stage, has a far broader reach of trade agreements than we do as a member of the European Union, and Switzerland has a trade deal with China. So if I come and buy a Japanese motor car, a Subaru or whatever it is, and I buy it here in Zurich, it will be cheaper than buying it in London, because in London we've slapped a 10% tariff on it. Isn't that really the point?
That's very true, but take for the trade deal that Switzerland made with China is very, very much one favor. It's in favor of China because China is a vast market and they have a huge amount of power. Second of all, Switzerland has free movement, so they can still sell into the EU without the 10% tariff. We will be facing that 10% tariff. So our cars will be less competitive. Now, Japan uses us as a gateway into the EU. The US uses us as a gateway into the EU. Hundreds of thousands of jobs from Japan.
Do you know something, Evan?
Yeah.
Evan, sure. there is quite a big domestic market in the UK too. This idea that the UK is purely a gateway. Right. For motor cars is nonsense. Right. And also, Evan. I mean, we now. I think last year was the first time we now do sell more motor cars that are produced in the United Kingdom outside the European Union than we do to countries inside the European Union.
As far as the most recent I've read is that the EU is still by far the most major market for us in terms of selling cars. However, you may I'm not going to say you're wrong there because you probably know more on that front. But the point I'm making is that we currently use WTO rules to sell around the EU WTO to sell around the world. If we drop out onto WTO, we're still going to be trading under WTO. We're not benefiting in any way. We still can trade with the world currently with EU WTO.
Evan, we don't know yet. We don't know yet, Evan, what the shape of this is going to be. And I get your concerns about these trade deals. Let me ask you one very quick question. Trade aside, do you think politically Juncker saying that the United Kingdom, triggering Article 50, should be a new beginning for Europe to integrate even more tightly?
Well, for a start, we need to negotiate the the exit bill, the bill that the UK is going to pay. Until that's actually negotiated, there's going to be no actual negotiations. And we've got 2 years to negotiate. And by the time we decide our bill, and we've got the elections to follow, we risk just dropping out onto WTO. So we should be much more worried about ourselves than Europe, because if we drop out onto WTO, we lose our biggest market.
Evan, we're a great country and we're going global, and the European Union may act very tough with us to begin with, but I think in the end, I'm quite optimistic common sense will prevail. Interesting conversation. Your texts and tweets. Why do none of the EU leaders talk about how the EU is going to finance the loss of revenue from Brexit? As the UK was the second largest contributor, there will have to be cuts to the EU budget or increased contributions. I suspect that's right. Many other member states will have to pay more. I'd like to know why Nigel and others are speaking as if economic success is a given for Britain after Brexit. If the EU fails and Brexit is a success, and Britain fails, but I can't make sense of that one. I'm really sorry, Nigel. If the EU was fair and good, has it actually had EU meetings in the UK or some of the other EU countries like Real Democracy? That's Paul from Sunbury. Yeah, actually, they take their summits all around, and the last time Britain was in the revolving presidency was back in 2005. And yes, there were summits in this country, as indeed there had been years before when John Major was Prime Minister. So Evan, really worried about trade, and what they're going to do to us. But I'm actually discussing today more what is going to happen to the European Union itself. And I'm going to ask Graham in Hang On Why. What does he think? Is Juncker right? Should they centralise more deeply?
Hello, Nigel. Good to talk to you again. No, Juncker is in denial. The European project is going to fail. The main reason being not just of the crises they're facing, like financial, euro, and other things, us leaving, etc., is the fact that they cannot face up to and realise the problems they're facing politically, the seismic shifts. They dismiss us leaving as being caused by us being lied to. They hail the Dutch result as a victory when the writing is so clearly on the cards that things are changing in Holland and, of course, in France and Germany. And they just cannot see the writing on the wall. It's like being an alcoholic. They don't accept there's a problem. They need to look themselves in the mirror, and there's no sign of them doing that whatsoever.
Do you remember that chap in the? Do you remember that chap in the Iraq War, Comical Ali, they called him, or Chemical Ali? He had a very nasty background, but he became Comical Ali, didn't he? When he was appearing live on Iraqi television, saying there are no American tanks in Baghdad. And at that moment, an American tank drove right behind him across the screen. And I think, Graham, that's a bit what they're like. They are completely, and you mentioned the analogy with an alcoholic, they are completely and utterly in denial. They have convinced themselves that the peoples of Europe want more and deeper Europe. It's rather like the communists. The Soviet communists convinced themselves the reason people were falling out of love with the Soviet Union is there hadn't been enough communism. They had to have more communism, and Juncker and co think people want more European Union. They are delusional. Had they been grown up and used Brexit to give powers back to member states, they might have stopped the big political rebellions that are happening as we speak. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and live from Zurich. It's 7:30, and time for the news with Rupert Bartier.
The government is being urged to make sure that every right and protection currently in EU law is transferred to the UK Statute Book. The Brexit Secretary David Davis has been setting out plans to transfer the legislation to Britain under the Great Repeal Bill. Police are investigating the murder of a mother and her 13-year-old son in the West Midlands. It happened in Stourbridge. A man in his 20s has been arrested. And search teams have found 5 bodies, along with the wreckage of a missing helicopter in North Wales. The aircraft disappeared yesterday afternoon while flying from Luton to Dublin. LBC weather. Rain in northern and western parts tonight, otherwise staying dry. Mild, a low of 10 Celsius. Cloudy tomorrow with a mix of rain and sunny spells, and a high of 20 degrees.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Well, the A1 is down to just one lane northbound between the Boreham Wood turn-off and the South Mims roundabout. That's after a collision. It's absolutely solid all the way from Apex Corner. The A12 stays closed. That's southbound at the Bow Underpass after an accident, causing queues from Hackney Wick. All around there looking pretty slow, actually. Lodge Avenue embarking is blocked on the roundabout at the A13 after a collision there, causing delays. Into Buckinghamshire now, the M40 down to just one lane from 3 if you're coming into London at the moment. That's after a serious collision just before the Wickham Handy Cross roundabout. Queues there still back to the A40 at Stoke and Church. And in West Yorkshire, the M62 is crawling westbound just east of Huddersfield between junctions 23 and 24 after an accident earlier on. As for the tubes, the Central Line still suffering severe delays after a train broke down earlier on today. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
Your eyes and ears are the most powerful tools we have to defeat terrorism. An attack takes planning and preparation. So look out for anything that strikes you as different or unusual, or anyone acting suspiciously. Don't worry about wasting police time. Let us decide if the information is important. Act on your instincts. Call 0800 789 321 or visit gov.uk/act.
It started with a letter in the mail, and then another. That's when they started. Soon you hear her, and now you're just struggling and panicking and just, how did it get so bad? The more you hide from debt, the worse it becomes. Capitalise has been helping thousands of people across London manage their debt with free, impartial, face-to-face advice. Get help today at capitalise.org.uk.
When you need more space.
Think creatively. What could you use a log cabin for? A studio? A home office? A den for the kids? Creative Living will design and build a log cabin to suit your needs, even taking care of electricity and climate control. See for yourself at our 3 large cabin display villages in Surrey. Find out where at creativelivingcabins.co.uk.
Your own log cabin, handcrafted, the creative living way.
You can earn more with a degree.
And you can get a degree in just 2 years with a course at GSM London.
Degrees are awarded by Plymouth University, and if you don't have a formal qualification, you can start on our foundation year.
Places are available for June at our Greenford and Greenwich campuses.
Enroll now. Text GSM to 66777
or visit gsmlondon.ac.uk.
GSM London.
Have bold dreams.
I'm James. I'm in year 10. Last term we watched a film about penguin behaviour in maths. But weirdly, it helped me get how probability works. Random.
The whole class thought it was random. I used a penguin documentary I saw to explain probability models. James laughed the most, but his grades improved the most too. I teach year 10. I'm Miss Ogan.
Apply now, and you could get a £25,000 tax-free bursary to train as a teacher. Search Get Into Teaching. Subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
I know how to avoid a soggy bottom. I know the name of cinema's most famous white shark. I know all the things you can do with a Maris Piper. And I definitely know the TV show that made this music famous. But I don't know my state pension.
There's a simple way to find out when you can get your state pension and how much it'll be. Search Your State Pension and get to know yours.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show, live from Zurich. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
One of the names you're going to hear a lot of in the next 2 years is Jean-Claude Juncker. Several times Prime Minister of Luxembourg, President of the European Commission. Actually, I have to say, on a personal level, he's highly entertaining and very, very amusing. Particularly, I've noticed after lunch. I can't actually think why that may be. But I'm asking a question. Is he actually fit to be Commission President? You heard earlier, and we debated, this ludicrous notion that Brexit somehow was a new beginning for European integration, when surely logic says they should be going in the other direction. But there's something else that Juncker said in Malta today. Have a listen to this.
So Brexit isn't the end. A lot of people would like it that way. Even people on another continent, where the newly elected US president was happy that the Brexit was taking place and has asked other countries to do the same. And if he goes on like that, I am going to promote the independence of Ohio and Austin, Texas, in the United States of America. It's business as usual in Europe. We must continue. We must forge ahead.
No, we didn't make that up. That did actually happen. Jean-Claude Juncker. If Mr. Trump isn't nice about the European Union and stops praising Brexit, Jean-Claude Juncker is going to start trying to break up America. He's going to start campaigning for Ohio to break away. Clearly this man has absolutely no understanding that the United States was built with consent, with a common culture, with a common language, and a desire to build a new state. And you know, it took them a long time and a very bloody civil war to sort themselves out. The EU, on the other hand, is attempting to impose citizenship, flags, anthems and presidents on the peoples of Europe without any consent. And frankly, I think that is a pretty pathetic insult to Donald Trump. I think in doing that, Juncker demeans himself and the European Union. In fact, I think he looks a bit of a joke. Now, our next caller, and I promise you, we didn't set this up, it just actually happened, but our next caller is Nicholas, who lives in Austin, Texas. Are you quaking, Nicholas, in your boots at the thought of what Jean-Claude Juncker might do to Texas?
Well, first off and foremost, absolute honor to speak to you for the first time. You're a statesman on the global stage. We have almost no statesmen in the United States, so it's a real honor. Thank you, sir.
Well, Nicholas, you're really kind. But let's talk about a statesman with a much bigger title than me. Let's talk about Jean-Claude Juncker. Isn't what he said a complete joke?
It is. First off, nobody knows who he is in the United States. I mean, mind you, that's kind of our situation here. Nobody knows who he is. He has no influence whatsoever. If people saw his name, they'd call him Junker, not Juncker. But we're all having a laugh here in Austin, Texas, because, you know, Austin, Texas is a liberal hotspot in Texas, but they are absolutely surrounded by the most conservative, most proud Texans that are around. So, you know, the greater Austin area is filled with proud Texans, seventh-generation Texans, you know, who fought in the War of Independence. So it's a big joke. Really funny. We're all having a laugh, but absolutely not serious. There's no way it could happen.
No. And frankly, you know, for this man to be, you know, the senior figure for 508 million Europeans, I think today, Nicholas, he's demeaned himself seriously. And I want you in Austin to go on having a good laugh. I thank you very much indeed for your call. And I have to say, very interesting, when I was in the States last week, both on the West Coast and on the East Coast, I met people who said, yeah, we're now tuning in to LBC. So global radio is going global, just as I hope the United Kingdom will with Brexit. Nicholas, thank you very much indeed for that call. John in Reading, have we triggered the end of the European Union, or is Juncker right? They can centralise even more deeply.
The caller before Nicholas hit the nail on the head when he said they are in denial.
Yes.
A wheel has fallen off the wagon, and you can pretend it hasn't for as long as you like, but eventually the rest of the wheels are going to fall off, and that wagon's going to come to a grinding halt. And that's what's going to happen here, hopefully. And can I just say this, Nigel? It's a pleasure to talk to you. But one thing, the elephant in the room is the question has to be asked, why? Why did a peace-loving, hard-working countries such as Great Britain vote to leave this European Union? Because people here haven't got short memories. There was lots of issues with housing, and people were seeing the doctor's surgeries were getting full up. Schools, they were finding it hard to get placements for their kids to schools. And you could practically kill a child in a car with no license or whatever, and your human rights were more important than your actions. And people just had enough of it. The British people are, in my opinion, one of the hardest working people ever. And I've been in this country over 30 years. I've worked hard here, and I remember what happened to Ireland. They were bullied and coerced when they voted to leave this shambles, and they were bullied and coerced until they come up with the right results.
Well, John, actually, just to remind listeners, it happened twice, didn't it? Twice in 15 years, the Irish rejected European treaties, and twice they were made to vote again and bullied and outspent in the most appalling, undemocratic way. Would you like to see Ireland leaving the European Union, John?
I hope so. I really hope so. Because, like I said, I was just going to say to you, I've been in this country over 30 years. I've got a great family here. I've got daughters in university. My wife worked hard. My kids worked hard. I've got no fear. I've got no fear about being sent back to Ireland when this country leaves. But this is all scaremongering. And the question is, they are in denial, and they need to take a look at why such a good country like this fought to leave. And I'm glad they did, because the British people won't be bullied like the Irish were bullied.
Well, I think in the end the Irish are going to stand up to all of this too, John. And it's very interesting because, you know, I keep hearing that the United Kingdom are Eurosceptic, but Ireland loves the European Union. And actually the evidence is that the Irish people are feeling as Eurosceptical about the EU as we did. And I think the day will come when Ireland will leave too. John, I thank you for your call. Your tweet, the EU is more obsessed with money, the so-called divorce bill, than sorting out the uncertainty of the UK and EU citizens as a priority, says Paul. Well, they certainly seem pretty keen to get their mitts on this £50 billion. But I'm saying, as far as I'm concerned, the clock started ticking today with us paying them off. Self-destruct. The EU will cut off their noses to spite their faces. The project means more to them than their own citizens. Augustus, when it comes to Mr Verhofstadt, and he's another figure you're going to see a lot of, he's the European Parliament's chief negotiator. He's been on LBC quite a bit just recently. He is absolutely filled with aggression. And when he sees me, I think something bordering on hatred. There's a virtual foaming at the mouth. But he is always saying that actually nation-states need to be abolished. We have to be a United States of Europe with a big, strong army and an active foreign policy. I think he's one of the most dangerous men in Europe. And yes, he, I think, would try and will try in the next weeks and months to protect the European Union dream that he has, even if it means citizens in his own state of Belgium lose jobs and suffer because they haven't got the same access to the UK market. But however bellicose they may be in the early days, I still think there's a strong argument that says that common sense in the end will prevail. I'm going to go next to Tony in Bellingham. Tony, have we triggered the end of the European Union?
No, I think it will go for at least another 100 years. My question for you, Nigel, is what do you think are the downsides of us leaving?
Well, I don't believe, Tony, there are any downsides in taking back your freedom, your liberty, your right of self-determination and your ability...
Practical downsides is what I'm asking you. That's the question I'm asking you. What are the practical downsides of this? Because if you're telling the people of Britain that there is no downside, when everybody in the world knows there's a downside to everything, then you're being a bit disingenuous.
Well, the downside is we've already wasted 9 months. The downside is there's another 2 years to go through. The downside is we don't yet exactly know what our deal with the EU is going to be. But the biggest downside, Tony, is that they've told us that we're banned from making our own new relationships with the rest of the world. So this is costly, but then being in the European Union was costly. Tony, I can't promise you, Tony, that in the future everything in Britain will be 100 times better because of Brexit. What I can promise you, Tony, is that we will be in charge and we will make those decisions for good or worse, richer or poorer, better or worse, till death us do part. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, live from Zurich, and it's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
So the Great Repeal Bill has been unveiled. Will it mean bad laws are scrapped, or does it put things like workers' rights in danger?
Clive Bull on LBC.
At Oak Furnitureland, everyone knows our furniture is 100% real hardwood.
And it's also 50% off.
But most importantly, it's 100% real hardwood.
Yes, but don't forget it's also 50% off.
Don't miss the big sale at Oak Furnitureland, where everything's 100% real hardwood with up to 50% off. The big sale ends this Sunday with up to 50% off. Visit oakfurnitureland.co.uk to find your nearest store.
Last year, 500,000 apprenticeships were started in England. I'm here with Brian, Managing Director of Berth and Boat Company, to find out how apprenticeships have benefited his business.
We've been in business since 1877, and I think it's vitally important to have new talent coming through the ranks. We've successfully trained some 65 apprentices over the last 10 years, many of whom are now at the heart of our business, helping us to win new contracts and deliver better products.
To find out how apprenticeships can work for your business, phone 08000 150 600 for free advice, or search Get In, Go Far.
The trouble with investing in cash ISAs these days is that you never seem to get a decent return. With today's high inflation and low interest rates, your money just doesn't reach its potential. At Money Farm, our experts can match you with an investment ISA that could give your money the chance to perform better. And right now, you could have your full ISA allowance looked after, free of management fees for a year if you transfer over £10,000. Visit moneyfarm.com. Your capital is at risk. Money Farm is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Travel Pack. Have the right flight at the right price. In fact, we'll price match most worldwide flights if you find one cheaper elsewhere at the time of booking. So, if you need to book a flight, remember the Travel Pack price match. Call Travel Pack on 0208 903 9999. You won't find a better price for your flight. Travel Pack 0208 903 9999. ATOL protected. Excludes low-cost operators. Competitors must be ATOL licensed. Conditions apply.
Let's talk about you. The I'll walk tomorrow you. The go on, I'll have a second helping you. The give us a minute love you. The heart disease you. So how about the enough is enough you? Start the fight back to a healthier you. Join over 1 million people who've taken the One You health quiz. See how you score. Search One You.
House sale fallen through? Getting divorced? Struggling financially? None of these things are nice. But Property Rescue can help. They can buy your home for cash, no matter what condition. Often exchanging within 48 hours. Which is a nice thing. It's also hassle-free, so go to propertyrescue.co.uk. They're buying houses all over Britain. Property Rescue, problem solved.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Zurich, only on LBC.
I think they've lost the plot. I think the triggering of Article 50 should have meant the EU27 today in Malta saying, look, we hear you. We get it. We're going to give powers back to nation states and to people and have a much looser kind of European Union. But oh no, up pops my old friend Jean-Claude Juncker to say that actually he thinks that this is the new beginning for European integration. They're going to go on expanding as an empire and being this massive success that he thinks it is in his own mind. And I wonder whether Toby and Clapham thinks that the European Union is a massive success.
No.
Right.
I mean, the original ideology of the EU about cooperative of nations, supporting each other so they didn't invade each other for resources that they lacked, is a good idea. But what it's morphed into, the autocracy that it is terrible, and it won't survive this for two reasons, I think. Firstly, because what they're doing already, their ideology will drive them towards ever closer union and enforced single currency. And secondly, because they're going to treat us badly in the negotiations, which means we will fall back on WTO rules. But there is an exception in the World Trade Organization's General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs that says if two already trading partners that are renegotiating the deal want to fall back, can't find actually come to a decision, then it falls back under WTO protections, but on exactly the same deal that they currently operated at.
Yeah, this is the most favoured nations status, isn't it? That's right. And you know, we had
and the subsequent articles, but yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. We had a previous caller who was very vexed about that, and I didn't want the debate to get too technical on this, but you clearly do know your stuff. Toby, I agree with you. I agree. The idea of getting the French and Germans together in the 1950s after 3 wars within 70 years, including the Franco-Prussian one going back to 1870, the idea that the French and Germans got together, broke bread together and traded more together was absolutely the right thing to do in a Europe that had been torn apart with disaster, division and war. Absolutely. But yeah, rather like communism was quite a good idea, wasn't it? It was going to make the world a fairer, better place. It has complete... Didn't it? Marvellous, wasn't it? They finished up killing 40 million of their own citizens in the Soviet Union. So I'm not suggesting the EU was anything like as bad as that. But, yeah, I think it was a noble ideal that has gone horribly wrong. And I'll tell you, Toby, I've met, over the last few years, quite a few people who went to work in Brussels back in the 70s, back in the 80s, Brits, working in the European Parliament, working in the European Commission, and all of them said the same thing. The high ideals that they joined for had now gone, and what they now saw was a self-serving political bloc that, frankly, didn't give a damn about anybody else apart from themselves, and, of course, their lovely, lovely top rate of tax of 16%. No wonder 10,000 of them in Brussels are earning more than the Prime Minister. So, Toby, as somebody that studied WTO and everything else, are you worried at all about what they can do to us?
No.
Fine. No, good. Do you know what? I tell you what, that is the most perfect answer. Thank you, Toby and Clapham. I enjoyed that call. And I'm going to ask Ralph in Stockholm. Ralph, good evening to you. So I saw... You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.